Hi, this is the History of Israel podcast, an Eat My Own Beat podcast. Over the coming weeks, months, and years, we'll be discussing the history of Israel. This is not a podcast to say which side is right, which side is wrong. It's not a podcast to talk about the war which is happening in Palestine. It's just simply the history of Israel.
Welcome back to episode 31 of the History of Israel podcast. Today we're going to talk about political transformations in the late antiquity. The late antique period also saw a wholesale transformation of political and social basis of life and around the Roman Empire. Roman citizen elite in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, under the pressure of taxation and ruinous costs of presenting spectacular public entertainments in the traditional cursus honorum, had found under the Antonides that security could be obtained only by combining their established rules in the local town with new ones, as servants and representatives of a distant emperor and a traveling court. After Constantine centralized the government in his new capital of Constantinople, dedicated in 330, the late antique upper classes were divided among those who had access to the far-away centralized administration in concert with the great landowners, and those who did not. Although they were well-born and thoroughly educated, a classical education and the election by the Senate to magistrates were no longer the path to success. Rome at the top of the late antique society was more bureaucratic and involved increasingly intricate channels of access to the emperor. The plain toga that had identified all the members of the Republican senatorial class was replaced with silk court vestments and jewelry associated with the Byzantine imperial iconography. Also indicative of the times is the fact that the imperial cabinet of advisors came to be known as the consortium, or those who would stand in courtly attendance upon the seated emperor, as distinct from the informal set of friends and advisors surrounding the Augustus.
This has been the History of Israel podcast. Check back every Wednesday for new episodes. We're available on Apple, iTunes, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. We also have each episode streaming on YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. We're available on eatmyownbeat.com as well as the History of Israel podcast on Facebook.